Hey guys, let's try this again for a third time, if you will. But before we do, I would like to ask you guys to do me a solid favor, and that's like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel, share the video, and click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube. You can find me at all your favorite audio video podcast affiliates like iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Audible, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and to an extent SiriusXM. Anywhere there's a podcast to be found, more than likely you'll find mine as well. And then, of course, I have various video outlets outside of YouTube, Rumble and VENMO. You can find similar, if not identical, content to what you see here. Only difference is they do allow a little bit more risque NFSW-like material, unlike YouTube, where YouTube would basically say, yeah, we got to shoot you down. Not shoot you down, but basically we got to put a pause. We got to put a pause, if you will, on that right now. Or, hey, we got to limit your monetization and ads because of it, or just mainly block it, if you will. So Rumble and VENMO allow me to do that. And then, of course, Dailymotion and Odyssey, you can find some other stuff there as well. Outside of that, we also have, various other areas where you can find me, of course. You can find me over at twitch.tv and kick.com. I got stuff at Twitch mostly, not Kick. I got to get those started up again. And Kick for the first time, period. But you can find me at twitch.tv. You can find me over at patreon.com, where I have plans. Basically, I've been doing this introduction for a while, so I should have it patent. But again, and I'm also doing it with an opportunity while I can, if you know what I mean. But at Patreon, you can find me, there as well. I got plans for it. If you want to check out the Patreon, support me there. It'd be greatly appreciated. And the plans, I will let you in on them when the time is right. You can also find me at deviantart.com, at bvw1979, and inkbunny.net, at bwrosas. You can also find me at various two stores. One of them is the new Fourth Wall store. I got a bit of merchandise there I think you will like. Just one bit of merchandise. I will have more coming in the future. And of course, you can check me out at my OG Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. That's been going on. That Teespring store has been going for the past few years now. And with that said, you can also support me through Cash App and Venmo. That'd be greatly appreciated as well. And during the premiere of this audio video, this third attempt at what I'm going to talk about, during the premiere of this video, you can chime in in the live chat. I should say you can chime in the live chat, if you will. Say hi, give your thoughts on what I have to say, as well as you can do it in the comment section during the premiere as well, and also, like I said, in the live chat. But also during this premiere, if you would like, in the live chat, SuperChats will be open. SuperChats will be open, and if you can't get in there during the premiere of this video and you're listening and watching after the premiere is done, then basically Super Thanks will be open if you want to help donate there. Now, let's catch our breath here. With those formalities out of the way, let's get this done, hopefully for a third time. Now, one of the things I've noticed is people probably have been wondering, why do adult animated shows like The Simpsons, Family Guy, Futurama, American Dad, Bob's Burgers, and now even Krapopolis, why are they so successful? Why are they getting multiple seasons? Why does it feel like one, even though it's in its third season, might be going and joining the likes of those that I mentioned that came before it? Others have tried and had semi-success, but ended up being canceled. So, what makes this one so different? Well, mainly, I think what makes it different is it takes place in Greek times, and it has that same familiarity, let's say, that a Futurama has, if you will. But the reason, though, in my opinion, these shows last for so long and why they get the opportunity to be renewed year after year after year is because of one crucial reason. You see, there's a lot of animated shows, non-adult and adult, that will basically rely on having one constant story. They will have one constant arc that they can fall back upon, despite whatever episode, whatever sub-story or main story plot, if you will, for an episode they have. They'll always have that one main arc to fall back upon, if you know what I mean. That basically is going to continue throughout the run of that current season or the run of the series. They always have that. And again, that goes for adult and non-adult animated shows. Same with live action. You know, they always have that one crucial arc. But what makes a series so successful at times, though, even from the adult perspective, especially nowadays, and even back when The Simpsons first started, but even more so nowadays, what makes it so successful is the fact that you don't have to rely on a canon, arc. You don't need to have any canonization from episode to episode. You don't need to rely on one main arc to get you through a season, to keep people invested. If you know what I mean. You don't need that, because what you need to do is just focus on what people are going to be entertained by, what's going to make them laugh, what's going to want to make them come back for more. And yeah, story arcs, sub-arcs that run throughout the course of a series, if not a season, they will do that. Hold on. All right, sorry about that, guys. The phone rang, and I had to basically move the water sprinkler, if you will, to another section of the lawn. But anyway, to get back on topic here, like I said, the reason they're succeeding is because basically they're going with the more, non-canon situation. Again, like I said, just to recap, because I had to pause there for a second, you can have an animated series, or adult animated series, or live action series, what have you. And basically they can work with a story arc that runs throughout the season, or if not, throughout the series. They can work with that, and that will get people invested. That will get people to want to tune in and see what's going to happen next. So that's a good thing. That is indeed a good thing. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. That is indeed a good thing. But when you look at these kind of shows, as I was trying to say before the phone rang, and I had to go take care of what I had to do in the backyard. When it comes to these kind of shows, you can have those little arcs in there, and everything, like, Fry, like in Futurama, you have Fry being cryogenically frozen, and you have that little sub arc of, with him wanting to find out exactly what happened and why he ended up this way. You also have basically the sub arc of him and Leia, I believe, getting together and all that. So you have your little sub arcs there. I mean, The Simpsons basically have something similar. As I've said before in the previous couple attempts on this, they had the main one was the sideshow Bob wanting to kill Bart story, if you will, and then by extension any member of the family, to get even with Bart. So you had that. And then on Family Guy, you had a more hilarious little subplot with Peter taking on the chicken and a few others. And then you have what you have with American Dad. I'm sure they have one. And then Bob's Burgers, and even Krapopolis has it to an extent. And even some of the animated adult shows streaming, like the second best hospital in the galaxy animated show on Prime, that has a bit of a sub arc, if you will, with one of the main female characters dating another girl, not the other main character, but somebody different, someone that basically that feels the same way about them, a little LGBTQ, if you will. You have that, and then you look at Netflix, you have stuff there as well. I mean, they have that new show they just brought out in time for Halloween. I mean, come on, there's that. You have a little sub arc there. And then, of course, you have what's going back to Prime. You have like Vidipop's, shows and everything there. The plot there, the little subplot that's going to work its way throughout the second season. Point is, you can have these arcs and everything that connect. These little sub arcs and these little sub arcs and everything, subplots. That run throughout the show, throughout the entire show's run, if not the one season. And that's great. But above that, though, what makes these kind of shows that I mentioned, so successful, and so successful and thriving the way they are, is mainly because of the fact that, again, what they give you is non-canon. What they give you with each episode is non-canon, non-consequential and all that to the overall story. Again, you can have your little sub-arcs, there's no doubt. But mainly a lot of the stories they give you, has no connection. And I'm sure people might bring up Has Been Hotel and say, well, they're going to have a continuous story. The plot's going to continue. Yeah, that's true to an extent, but there are going to be episodes, and we saw this with, the first season. They are going to have filler episodes that won't have much connection to the main plot. They'll just be there to fill, time. They'll be there to fill a quota, and then that's it. Everything else, outside of that will have that connection, but there will be some that won't. Same with Hell of a Boss. There's going to be some connection, via one big plot, but at the end of the day, you're going to have episodes that feel like, they have no connection to the plot because of the way they, divert and pivot in different directions. And basically, that's what you see here. That's what I'm trying to say here, is that basically these shows like The Simpsons, Krapopolis, American Dad, Futurama, Bob's Burgers, Family Guy, the reason they are successful is that even though they might have subplots, sub-arcs that penetrate throughout the run of the show, if not for one season, even though they have those, most of the episodes are non-canon. They have no connection. And when they try, like let's say what Family Guy did with the Brian situation, years ago, they retcon it. Because not only do they realize they're going to get backlash from fans and from certain organizations, if you will, but they act like after they retcon it that it never happened. Like, they might reference here and there, but they'll mainly act like it never really happened. And that's kind of what you get here, with these, with the rest of these shows. That's kind of what you get here, with them. Basically, episodes where things will happen, but there will be no consequences. There will be no, like repercussions in a following episode down the line, if not the next week. There won't be any of that. The episode that takes place will have things happen, and then you move on, and then that's it. So on and so forth. That's what will happen. And when you look at shows like The Simpsons, you look at shows like Family Guy, like American Dad, and mostly and Bob's Burgers, but then you look at two shows here that take place in different time periods. You take a look at Krapopolis in Greek times. You take a look at Futurama, that's in the future. You look at those, and you're like, okay, why do they differ a little bit more than the ones you just mentioned? Because here's the thing: even though there are certain things that take place, in those episodes, in the episodes of those shows and everything that basically make no sense, what have you, and that have no bearing on the following episode, the following week or day. What makes Futurama and Krapopolis the exception is basically the fact that, well, you can do just about anything with the characters, and basically they'll be fine the next day. It's basically like essentially, every episode for Futurama as of late, from what I've seen and heard, and same with Krapopolis, basically every episode with them, if you will, is like a one-shot story. It's a one-shot non-canon story to where the next episode, it basically will have no acknowledgement of what happened in the last episode. End of story. With The Simpsons, it's the same thing. Similar. Basically, a lot of those stories are one-shot. They are non-canon, if you will. But that all depends on the theme of the episode. Like, upcoming, we have the Treehouse of Horror annual yearly special coming. And we all know in that kind of stuff, anything that happens there is non-canon. It's a one-shot story. We know that. Family Guy's done the same thing recently. We know American Dad has done it. We know Bob's Burgers has done it. We've all known that when they do holiday-themed episodes, mostly, for Halloween, somewhat Christmas, if you will, that a lot of those are just one-shot non-canon. And that's it. That's the big difference between them and the two that I'm mentioning, Futurama and Krapopolis. Because with Futurama and Krapopolis, you can have every week, every day, depending on when new episodes are shown, basically every episode that comes out is essentially a one-shot non-canon. They don't have to worry about, holiday. I mean, they do theme some of their episodes and all that, but still, you don't have to worry about this or worry about that and everything. It's, it's basically like, okay, let's have this happen to the character, let's have that happen to the character, but that's it. And that's it. We'll have it happen, we'll have this happen, we'll have that happen, and then come the next episode, we'll act like it never occurred. And they do that. I mean, how many times do you go on Facebook or on YouTube and you'll see clips of, from Futurama where the characters will get eaten, absorbed, killed, disintegrated, but then come, like the next episode or even later on in the same episode, they get revived, they get resurrected, if you will, and they act like, oh, nothing happened. Basically, they get the memory wiped, if you will. They get the memory wiped of, some of what happened to them not happening. Same with Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty is a good example. You might say, well, that's got somewhat of a continuity to it. Yes, somewhat it does. It does have that little sub-arc and everything, but it's one of those sub-arcs that, again, really has no bearing on the overall presentation. Because you're going to have the characters go to different planets and areas and times and everything like that, but what happens at the end of the day? What happens at the end of the day? What happens is Rick will use his device to wipe their memories. Whatever happens to Morty and his sister, he'll wipe, once he gets things back to normal, what happens? He wipes the memory. Whatever happens to his daughter, he wipes her memories. Whatever happens to his future version of his daughter, he wipes her memory. And all that, because he doesn't want them remembering, what they went through. He doesn't want that. And thus, by doing so, he basically is resetting things to the status quo as best as he could. That's what he's doing. He's resetting things back to the status quo, even though the only other subplot they have in there, outside of that always being the norm, is, the family's kind of catching on to him. They're like, kind of figuring out, okay, we see what you're doing, we're seeing what you're doing, and we're not going to let it happen if you try something on us again. Which is a cool, kind of a cool, I guess you could say, a solution. Solution, that's the one I'm looking for. A solution to the problem. It's kind of a cool solution. But again, outside of that, there's a reason. They have an actual inverse reasoning for everything being reset and being, looked at as one-shot non-canon. Here, with Futurama and Krapopolis, every episode they have is one-shot non-canon. That's it. Like I said, with Futurama, they'll have the characters killed off, and then either later on, towards the end of the episode, they'll be revived, or basically they'll be killed off towards the end of the episode, and they'll just be brought back in the next episode like nothing happened, and not even acknowledge what occurred in the previous one. And the same with Krapopolis. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mentioned this in the first attempt I tried to do with my Polaroid 4K. I don't think I had the external mic connected right or something. But basically, one of the channels I'm subscribed to here on YouTube is Mr. Unknown RIP. Mr. Unknown RIP. And the main thing he does with his channel is he dedicates it to all kinds of transformations and melting, shape-shifting, you name it. Well, one of his more recent additions, if you will, were from Krapopolis. And one of the more recent additions was of a character that's a shapeshifter. She's a god, but she's a shapeshifting god. She can become any animal or any, I guess, thing, inanimate or whatever, when she wants to. She can become a horse, like she did in one of the recent clips he put up. She can become an eagle. She can become an ant. She can become, any kind of animal, and like I said, maybe potentially any inanimate object or something to that extent. But also she can always want, and that's of her own will. That's of her own power. She can do that to herself. She can do that to her husband, to her son, to anybody that, she'll basically want to share that gift with, to either show them something, show them something as to like why she does it, or help them do this, or help them do that. She's kind of like, she's basically a protagonist with a bit of an ego. She kind of like has a self-inflated ego, kind of a mischiefy she's kind of, I don't know how to describe Delilah, because that's her name, but she's kind of like, a mischievous protagonist with a good heart. We'll put it that way. She's kind of like a troublemaker with a good heart. But she's also and a mother. She's a mother, so she also has that motherly instinct. So she basically is a mischievous protagonist with a motherly good heart. We'll put it that way, and a bit of an ego. But point I'm getting at is she can turn into anything, right? Or turn herself or anybody else into anything. She has that power. Here's the thing. In one of the more recent episodes that came out for the current season, she wanted, because she doesn't have the power to do this, because in Greek mythology, gods are only limited to what they can do. She wanted, basically, to be turned into a constellation. And the only person that could do that for her is Orion. So she basically decides to have her husband do something that's like a desecration. Basically, he's like a banishment or something. She wants something that's going to cause trouble, because what she reads up or hears about is the last person that did something to disrespect Orion. It caused them to get turned into a constellation, and they never changed back. Now, one would say, well, one might say if they, study Greek mythology, like let's say a Josh Scorcher, aka Firebrand of Fabuquestria, here on YouTube, basically one would say, well, when Orion would, do that, and they even describe it in, the description of the show, when Orion would do that, it would be for a punishment. And that the only way they can get out of that punishment is to admit to what they've done, or have whoever basically have whoever was a culprit, basically a partner in crime for them, undo what they've done. That's basically what it is. And Delilah, her intention is not just to have a husband do what he's done, kind of ban things and all that, and, the worshipping to Orion and all that, but her plan is for him not to rescind that banishment. Because her plan is that she wants to be the one to admit to Orion she told her husband to do it, and that way she can be the one that gets turned into a constellation. But she doesn't want it. But here's the thing. You might ask yourself, well, why? That's a punishment. Not to her. Not to her, because she, for some odd reason, has this, I think I can say it now, she has this fetish for wanting to become a constellation, because she wants to see how pointy her arse, as she calls it, is, or could be. And basically, well, Orion sees what she's trying to do, and he goats, but she basically, one of the things that she's known for, because again, this was what makes her mischievous, is she knows how to goat people into giving her what she wants, or goat them into allowing her to do to them what she does for herself, to basically show them certain things and da-da-da-da. So Orion basically says, okay, fine, I'll give you what you want. Poof! Turns her into a constellation. And he basically reminds her, hey, look, you know what you got to do to get out of that. And she's like, why would I want to? I love it. So she basically remains as a constellation for the rest of the episode. Even the family's like, hey, is there a way we can turn you back? And the mom's like, as a constellation, she's like, yeah, your father knows what to do, but he better not. He better not do it, because I don't want to, she's basically saying she wants to be a constellation forever. And basically the episode ends with her remaining as a constellation and seeing this grown man walking out of the woods. And he's supposed to be this baby. The episode's title is Basket Baby. And the baby is basically like a allegory, it's like a parodied allegory, if you will, of Moses. A satire allegory of Moses. So basically, he gets raised by wolves and everything, like, let's say Mowgli in Jungle Book and everything. Mowgli, like Mowgli in Jungle Book, Tarzan, Tarzan's raised by apes and Tarzan and so on. And he's getting ready to come, and he's coming out of the forest, and he sees the city, and he's got this intention of probably going there. But then, all of a sudden, you hear, the camera zooms up, and you see, Delilah's, Delilah's still a constellation, and she's like, hey, what do you think you're doing? Don't you even think about doing that? Get out of here. And, makes him run off. Because, she freaked him out by being a talking constellation, a talking group of stars, if you will. But I bring that up mainly because of the fact that in the following episode, she's back to normal. And basically basically the epilogue of that previous episode, where she gets turned into a constellation, when the baby shows up as a grown person now, it's supposed to imply at the end that time, years have passed. A lot of years, like 10, 20 years have passed. 2 decades mainly have passed, and she's remained as a constellation this entire time, all that entire time, and all that. And that's how the episode ends. But like I said, it's not. But like I said before, it's and it basically the following episode she's back to normal. So as I acknowledged, like I've been saying, what that proves right there is her becoming a constellation, if permanently, if you will, in the third episode of the third season. It was a one shot. It was a one shot non-canon deal that had no consequences, no ramifications, what have you, on the rest of on the following episode, or maybe even the rest of the series or the season, if you will, the rest of the season. So basically that's why, again, you look at something like that, you look at Futurama, these being two big examples as of late of adult animated shows that are mainly consisted of one shot. The seasons, I should say, are consisted of one shot non-canon episodes that have no bearing on the next episode or not. This shows you why they're so popular and beloved and why they get renewed. And the same goes for The Simpsons and Family Guy and Futurama and American Dad and, well, I said Futurama and Krapopolis, like I said, that one-shot non-canon deal. But I was trying to say, the same goes for The Simpsons, Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, American Dad. Most of their episodes are non-canon episodes. That's what they are. The non-canon episodes that have no bearings. They have no bearings on the following episode unless they wanted to. And that the only one-shot non-canons are the holiday-themed episodes like the Treehouse of Horror, or even the Christmas ones, and that's it. Those are the only one-shot non-canons. Now, you'll probably ask yourself, well, if the regular episodes are non-canon, what makes them not one-shot? What makes those episodes non-canon and not one-shot is there are references to previous seasons and episodes, but those references have no bearing. It's just like, remember this place? Like, let's say you have Marge driving with Bart somewhere, and Marge points something out to Bart and says, "Hey, remember this?" And Bart's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that. You took me there, basically for such and such thing, right?" And that would be a reference, like, let's say, to a previous season, maybe a season way at the beginning, but and that would be it, and then they would just move on, and basically that reference would have no bearing. It would have no bearing. And that's the difference between a non-canon and a one-shot non-canon. It would have basically the non-canon is you could have references to previous situations, moments and all that, but that would have no bearing. Have no bearing on the rest of the episode, if you will. A one-shot non-canon basically is things happen, but then things happen to the characters and whatever. And then in the following episode, it's like nothing happened to them. It's not acknowledged, not referenced, nothing. That to me, in my opinion, is a difference between a one-shot non-canon and a non-canon. A non-canon, basically is simply, you can make a reference to a previous event, but it has no bearing on the rest of the episode. You're just referencing it. That's it. A one-shot non-canon is basically something happens, to the characters or whatever, and it only has bearings on that episode, and in the following episode, everything is just like nothing happened. There's no reference, no anything. So to me, that's why in their own way, all of these shows, from The Simpsons, Bob's Burgers, American Dad, and Family Guy, from a non-canon but with references situation, that's why they've thrived and survived for so long. And from a one-shot non-canon deal as of late, this is why the same goes for Krapopolis and Futurama. It's because basically they're not relying on ongoing story arc that runs throughout the series, if not the season. You know, all they're focusing on is giving people entertainment that's going to make them laugh and enjoy themselves. And that's why these have survived as long as they have, in my opinion. That's why they have survived. But that's all I'm going to say on it, guys. I know I may have sounded like I was rambling and all that, but hopefully I've made some sense for you guys to kind of look into this and kind of give your own thoughts on it. If you haven't already done so in the live chat, you hopefully will do so in the comments. But give me your thoughts. What do you agree with me? Do you agree with me on what I had to say? Do you think, you know, what makes these shows so successful and have thrived for as long as they have, and potentially for Krapopolis to do the same thing, do you think it's mainly because of the fact that they are, you know, mainly seasonally consisting of non-canon episodes, and in the case of Futurama and Krapopolis, you know, as of, you know, recently, you know, one-shot, you know, non-canon episodes? Do you think that's the reason? Or do you think maybe there's just a popularity of the characters and it's just money or whatever? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section if you haven't already put them in the live chat. And until next time, guys, like I said at the beginning, do me a favor and like the video, ring the bell for notifications, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the links in the description to find my content elsewhere outside of YouTube, as well as support me elsewhere outside of YouTube as well. But guys, that's all I'm going to say on it. Again, give me your thoughts, and until next time, I am out.